For young people, it's very hard for them to understand how scary it was to be a black person living in South Africa during that time.
The laws of apartheid.
Perfect and studied racism, which is, it's disappointing sometimes when you realize how far some people will go, what lengths people will go to oppress other people.
And so you were literally born a crime.
Right.
Systemic racial discrimination and its relation to status and poverty. Number 1, racism. What is racism in poverty? Who does it affect?
Racism is when a person is treated unfairly, harassed, or degraded due to their race or ethnicity. It is generally rooted from the belief in white supremacy and people who excuse their actions by believing those with darker skin are lesser than those with lighter skin.
People affected by systemic racism. In school districts, black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended than a white student. In criminal justice, people of color are 20% more likely to be sentenced to jail time and 20% more likely to have a longer sentence than a white person. In housing, people of color are told about and shown fewer houses than whites. In black ownership for houses is 42%, while white ownership for houses is 72%. For surveillance, blacks are 30% more likely to be pulled over by a cop. More than half of all black Americans know someone who has been harassed by the police, and Muslims are under increasing and often illegal surveillance.
Adding on to the South African apartheid, we also have multiple examples of segregation that occurred in America. Looking back at our history, Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in the southern United States. All public places were segregated and forbade African Americans from entering. Life during this time was difficult. Whites were superior to blacks in all ways. Sexual relationships were inhibited between races. African Americans were stripped of rights to enter certain facilities and have equal bus transportation as whites. Blacks were subjected to a lower education level with less experienced teachers, resulting in a more difficult achievement process for success. Other factors of this era included segregated communities with no interracial communication and lower access to needed resources.
Examples of segregation and apartheid. South African apartheid. Laws and boundaries. Black citizens were removed from their homes and forced into segregated neighborhoods. Black people were not allowed to marry white people, and it was illegal to not carry a passbook. What life was like. Many struggled to get jobs, especially women. Colored people, people with white and black parents, couldn't find a group to belong in. In order to make desperate money, crime was usually an option.
Racism and poverty. Notions of racism and racial inferiority contribute to the recurring denial of structural forms of racism. It reflects upon the lack of education, sufficient housing, and healthcare. Discrimination suffered by ethnic groups have encouraged certain populations to receive unfair basic needs and services.
According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development report presented to Congress in January, black people make up nearly half the homeless population, despite making up only 13% of the population. The net worth of a typical white family, $171,000, is nearly 10 times greater than that of a black family, $17,150, according to the Federal Reserve's 2016 survey of consumer finances. What can we do? Be aware of the injustices around us and actively fight for them, no matter what skin color you are. Also, take a look into the Fair Fight Initiative website and maybe donate. And finally, support ethnic groups who are affected by racism.
So here's the fundamental problem with racism, is that it's an idea that is defeated over and over again by people contradicting what people have been told. And that is, black and white cannot mix, colors cannot mix. And when people mix, they prove that it can happen. They prove that love can cross color boundaries.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the sun.